Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we talk all about the home teams. We'll talk about the Saints, LSU, Tulane, Nichols. And we got a great analyst to break it down for you tonight. Mike Detillier, college football and pro football analyst extraordinaire, joins us on the program. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Always my pleasure, buddy.
Mike, tell folks about you. We're ready to get into the in the playoffs. You're not too far from your book, getting your book ready to go here. You got a lot going on. You're with Thibodeau Regional as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about everything you got going on.
Well, at least the college football season has wound down. So my shows Friday and Saturday are not as many because I do 13 each week. So pro and college. So it's time consuming. I never say busy. You know, I'm always afraid my dad raised back up and smacked me because he was one of them that was, man, you know, be humble, just do your job, don't say anything, and I don't ever want to hear the word busy come out of you.
Yes.
And so, but it is time consuming to do 13 pregame shows each week.
Yes.
And so that's weaned down into the bowl season comes around, and that'll crank back up. And so, yeah, my work with Thibodeau Regional Medical Center, it's
what you guys got going?
$77 million facility on the bayou. Unbelievable. Archie Manning and I, along with Jennifer Hale, are involved with it in the public relations part. And they, in the middle of what used to be a cane field,
right
on the bayou, $77 million wellness center that was built there. Greg Stock, the CEO, he was the guy that came up with envision this. Got over 5,500 members, and also have a lot of the sports medicine situations set up in there. Unbelievable facilities out on the bayou. First time Archie and I saw it, once it was really up, he was like, Mike, I remember coming here. We used to practice at Nichols.
Right.
And I never seen big mosquitoes like that in my life. And now, you know, it's all down, beautiful facility. And they're going to have a phase 2 of it where they're going to build sand volleyball courts, a football field,
really,
track field. And it's unbelievable what's kind of popped up there. And not to get into all the dynamics of it, but the all field will never be the same as we grew up in that era of 70s, 80s.
Sure.
No one's going to bring that back. The technology has changed and different things with it. But I do think the medical field will be the door opener for so many people, not only on the bayou, but I think all across the state of Louisiana, the healthcare industry, which is really the biggest boom in this area, and certainly Thibodeau Regional and the Wellness Center has been a big part of that.
Well, they got a great reputation. Whether you're talking about the Wellness Center, you're talking about what they're doing right now in terms of helping athletes, the reputation precedes them, no doubt about it.
The other thing, too, with it, involved in so many youth camps, so many camps for high school kids. You know, we have the biggest offensive, defensive lineman camp in the country that happens every June at Nicholls State University. Oh boy, Papa Pete Jenkins runs that along with Don Rodrigue. They have it. And last year we had 440 kids that showed up there. The Manning camp, It almost comes right after it,
Right.
where 1,200 kids from across the country.
It's great.
And so a lot of different camps there, and also volleyball, basketball, baseball, all in line there. And we can see where eventually, hopefully, that instead of athletes who grew up in Louisiana that go train in Florida or Arizona or California would stay home
Right.
and do it at the wellness center where they would have that facility for them.
Well, that's fantastic. Again, congratulations to all those involved in that. Let's stay on the Bayou, and we'll start with Nichols because, again, congratulations to them on another fantastic season, taking another step with that program. You're intimately involved. You know everything that's going on over there. Talk a little bit about it.
Timmy's done an unbelievable job. Tim Rebowe, when he took this program over, it was on life support, so to speak. 0-12 season. They had been 1-29 in the Southland Conference when he took over. They were the Southland Conference champions 4 years later under Timmy, and back-to-back years into the playoffs. And Tim really did a great job of recruiting. You could drop a quarter on the state of Louisiana, and it would hit in Thibodaux, but all across New Orleans, the River Parish area, the Bayou region, spread out a little bit into Baton Rouge. Now they into Mississippi quite a bit, but in that little kind of quarter area is where he got a ton of kids. Started first with Chase Forcade. Man, I just can't say enough. He put them on the map football-wise, and I think was able to draw in a lot of young men from the Catholic League in the New Orleans area. Man, Chase is going to Nichols, I'm going there.
Right.
And Chase had options at the end.
Yes, he did. Maryland, right?
Maryland, also UL Monroe, and Southern Miss got in real late. Now, that was a situation where the coach got a late hire, and but he had verbally committed to Nichols in the summer and kept with it throughout. And so he's just been phenomenal there. Southland Conference Player of the Year.
Yes.
Sully Lesh from Hornville. From Letcher. Oh,
Yes.
and my cousin Tim, he would spank me good
Right.
for that.
For saying that,
But he was a great player at Letcher High School, and he was small. He didn't have great size. He wasn't this bulky 300-pound guy. He wasn't 6'3", and every school 1A passed on him. And I remember Tim telling me, Mike, got to find a school somewhere that's going to pick him up. He's got a lot of 1AA schools after him, but no Division I school. And I think the second day of practice, it may have been the second day or the third day, I remember talking to Coach Rebowe, and he was like, you know what, Sully Lesh is going to start for us. I mean, it's just the second or third day of practice. He was like, no, he's that good. And so what Sully did for the River Parish and bringing those kids in, Chase did on the New Orleans side, man, that's big time. And so, a kid from Rummel and a kid from Letcher basically kind of started everything. And then they were able to get everything in between. They were able to recruit extremely well and kept a lot of that talent here that may have went to a McNeese or a Southeastern, or Louisiana Tech. And at one time, Southern Miss heavily recruited the Bayou, River Parish area along with New Orleans. So done just a phenomenal job, and he's got a big chunk of that returning next year, including Sully Lesh and Chase Forcade.
Obviously, when you put a program back on the map or you rebuild a program, other schools take notice. Do you think that Coach Rebowe will stay at
Well, I think he'll
Nichols?
stay for 2019 for sure. Southeastern made a big run at him last year.
Yes.
Made a huge run at him. What conversations he had with UL, it's murky, basically, but they certainly made a great choice.
Yes.
Billy Napier's just done a phenomenal job with the Raging Cajuns there in that 1 year time frame. So, I think he understands what he's making at Nichols isn't what he would make at a UL or a Louisiana Tech. But opportunities, and sometimes timing has to be right. But we all saw Southeastern, they made a major run at Rebowe last year, and he decided to stay with some concessions from the school to do certain things that not only helped the football program, that helped the entire athletic program. When you think about it, Doobie plays on us. What she's done to women's basketball at Nicholls State, winning the Southland Conference tournament, going to the tournament itself. Seth Thibodeau has done an unbelievable job in baseball. You look at their softball team has been outstanding also. They had the basketball team and they had that great run with Richie Riley, and then he leaves there to go to South Alabama. Interesting what's happened on the Bayou. I thought last year was maybe the best year I have ever seen in my lifetime at Nicholls for athletics. When you consider what Timmy did, what Doobie did, Seth, Richie, it was unreal.
Yeah, congratulations to them. You brought up ULL. They'll take on Tulane in the Cure Bowl in Orlando. It'll be the first bowl game of the year. It'll be on December the 15th. Your thoughts about Tulane's season? Taking the next step here within the American Athletic Conference and becoming bowl eligible, and then getting an opportunity to go to the bowl. And you mentioned with the situation with Louisiana Lafayette as well.
Yeah, Billy's done a fantastic job there. He's come in and made quite an impact. I didn't know Billy. I knew of him, but I didn't know him until he got the UL job. And his deal is, I'm the salesman, and he sure was. And he was able to get some transfers to come in. Merritt, who was at Destrehan, was able to came back from Oregon. He's made a huge impact, but he's an offensive-minded coach. He puts a lot of pressure. He wants to stay in that outside lane and keep putting the pressure on you. And they played better on the defensive side of football this year. With Coach Fritz, mid-season, did anybody think?
Nobody. I gave up on him. I'll say it right now, Mike. I did.
At that stage, they would be bowl eligible.
Right. No, and look, when you talk about Tulane right now, 6-6, 5-3 in the conference, winning their last game against Navy, 29-23, coming back. McMillan now taking over for at quarterback for Banks.
That, I think, maybe was the turning point. That, it was the right fit for Justin.
Yes.
He came in here, everything sort of fit really well, and they played better on defense. You saw him that first game.
They got better every week on defense.
Because here you had a freshman quarterback for Wake Forest that he looked great. I said, Eric, there's no way this team, unless they make a major turnaround, can be bowl eligible. You see a lot of speed in the backfield. And now with the change at offensive coordinator, I think Willie saw, with the athletes we have in Louisiana, we can get, because as much as we talk about Louisiana being, or LSU being DBU, and a lot of that being from this state, what this state puts out more than any position, wide receiver to colleges. I gave this to Archie because the Manning camp is not only about quarterbacks, it's also about receivers coming there. They have had 42 Division I scholarship receivers in the last 4 years attend the Manning camp from Louisiana.
Wow, that's strong.
So you're talking about a state that is producing a lot of wide receivers. And it is the glamour position today. Come on, we growing up, it was the running back spot. But today,
the divas.
It's the receivers. That's where you can find them. And I do think 7-on-7 has changed the football world, enhancing that part of the game, the pitch and catch part of the game, because you can practice it 10 months, 11 months out the year. What it's taken away from is defensively. You don't have those edge rushers anymore. And I told you this story. I told Coach O when he took the job, I said, you'll find a standout quarterback long before you find a top edge rusher again. He said, well, I got a kid coming in that's pretty good. And Caleb Von Chason, I said, okay, you got one. Where's the next one going to come from? And I think you're going to see that trend that the sport is moving much more to almost Madden-like. Basketball on grass, fast-paced, score. Hope you can get a stop and squeeze you into kicking a field goal instead of getting a touchdown.
For the audience, Willie Fritz did fire his offensive coordinator, been with him the whole time at Tulane, Doug Ruse. Will Hall was hired as the OC. He will not. I don't think he's going to handle the bowl game, but again, he will take over the offense for next season.
You're going to see a different look from Will Hall. It's going to be a different look. I think you're going to see him spread the field out. A lot more pitch and catch part of it. The RPO is certainly part of the game. And I think that enhances your running game because I've got to match up out on the edge. If I know you're going to run the ball 65% of the time, I can play you a little bit differently than I can if I spread you out 4 wide receivers. He's used to that.
Right.
That's his game.
Let's stay with the college game. We'll get to the Saints a little bit later on in the program. LSU finishes the regular season 9-3, ranked 11th in the college football poll, which put them obviously in the top 12, which made them eligible for a New Year's Six bowl. They'll be in the Fiesta Bowl against UCF on a 25-game win streak. First of all, your thoughts about the bowl, your thoughts about the ranking, and then we'll get into Greedy Williams and some of the other peripheral stuff that's going on right now. But what an accomplishment for this particular program that some people thought 5 and 6 games was the ceiling for them.
You know, during the summer, O and I, we had a little banquet we did. He said, "What do you say?" And I said, "I think you'll be an 8-14." And he just gave me a quick look and he was like, "Well, at least you give us 8 wins. Everybody else is saying 6 and 7. Now, you have some people that have revised their prediction after the fact, so to speak. But he was the only guy that said, "You know what? We're going to do better than that." I said, "You're going to do better than the 8?" He said, "We're going to be a lot better than people think." He said, "I'm not picking a record," but he said, "We're going to be a lot better than people think we're going to be." And my thing always to him was, tell me a signature player you have on offense. And that silence. Well, we got this, we got that. You don't have a signature guy. Joe Burrow turned into a very good quarterback for them. Their offensive line play was erratic all year long. Suspensions, injuries had a lot to do with it. But you saw the erratic play. And I think it affected this offense in a lot of ways. Because if you don't win up front, man, you got troubles.
Especially the SEC.
The surprise was Nick Brossette. Man, if I'd have told you, he rushes for 900 yards, he scores the touchdowns, you'd have said, what are you talking about? He was a perennial bench warmer. But look who he was sitting behind.
Yes.
You know, with Fournette and Geis and Darrell Williams, he didn't have that opportunity. I thought he did the best job of any of the offensive guys that you thought before the season, you know, Nick Brossette, you don't know nothing about him. But they were able to run the football, but they ran it a lot more than they threw it. Wasn't this 50-50? I never believed that to begin with. You and I talked about that in the summer.
Yes,
Man, he can sling it all he wants about we're going to be 50-50. And I know where Ed Orgeron grew up.
Right.
I know his style of thinking. Yes, he spread the field out more, but he's still going to go back to the running game. He believes in that a lot. I think the injuries hurt. There was a lot of max protect. So what it does is it takes a guy or two out. And so all of a sudden now you got a couple of targets if they don't get open, and the inconsistency at wide receiver. Yes. I thought Jefferson played an outstanding year on offense. I wish he'd have got the football more to Foster Morrow.
Yes.
Because over the middle, he's not a speed guy by any stretch. He ain't winning no football 400 meter. He's not the anchor. But he gets open, and he's a huge target guy. And I think you saw that a little bit more in the season. And they wanted to run Joe Burrow more, but with the injury to Miles Brennan, couldn't. To get to 9 wins and to get to that brink that you were so close to hitting that 10 mark.
Yes.
But you are what your record says you are. You had a chance to win in regulation.
Right.
You didn't do it. You can complain about officials all you want, and you can complain a long time. Nothing's changing. Not in this conference. Right. Nothing's changing. They happy with what they got officiating, you know, if you listen to Greg Sankey. So defensively, man, you look back, their secondary before the injuries started to whittle them. Man, Christian Fulton and Greedy Williams was as good as you could imagine at cornerback. And Christian, after their first couple games, knocked off that dust. Man, he was special. And then Grant Delpit. I told you this, I think the last time I was here, and talking to this was after the Miami game, and he made the comment that I've only had one guy in my entire career I've given as much latitude on defense than Grant Delpit. I said, what are you talking about? He said, no, I had Troy Polamalu at USC. Yes. And I said, so you could? He said, listen, I'm not comparing what Troy could do to what Grant could do. I'm telling you, we've given him that latitude. And he said, if he's up front as a blitzer and run support in the coverage part of the game, he said, that was Troy. He could do, there wasn't anything he couldn't do out on the football field. And he said Grant Delpit's the same way. They didn't get the pass rush they really wanted.
Yes.
That, and some of that certainly had to do with Chason not being there. But still, you didn't get that consistent edge pressure that normally you would see from LSU. And I think the thing that irks him the most, you go back to the big games. Florida ran the ball.
Right.
Georgia had success, even though you won.
Right, and they went away from it.
And I don't know whose genius idea was to unplug that, but that didn't work. You looked at Alabama. Alabama run the football on LSU.
A&M.
And Travion Williams rushed for 198 yards against you in the final game.
Yes.
Man, more than anything, as a former defensive line coach, I knew if anything got Bebe's blood boiling, it was that.
Yes.
Because that's his wheelhouse, to stop the run and force you to throw the football downfield. So it's an interesting matchup with Central Florida. They don't have their starting quarterback. Their defense gives up a lot of yardage, a lot of points, and now LSU plays the game without Greedy, without Christian Fulton. So your two starting corners are out. Kelvin Joseph, who would step in, he's battled a hamstring now for 6 weeks.
Yes.
Will he be healthy? Jacob Phillips is going to miss the first half of the game because of the targeting penalty. Braden Fajoku is going to miss the game because of an injury. So the dynamics of this game has changed dramatically. And, you know, I've had some people tell me, oh, well, that guy, he really played well in the conference championship game, that quarterback. Oh, really? Look what this kid did. He put Central Florida on the map. Similar to what Chase 4K did at Nichols, that's what McKenzie did for Central Florida.
Talk about the offense for a moment. First of all, do you anticipate Ensminger staying as the offensive coordinator? If you do, when you look at the offense, I thought the offense was kind of helter-skelter, didn't have a real identity this year. Do you expect year two of Ensminger to have more of an identity if he stays, or do you think, we'll go in a different direction and maybe bring in a high-profile offensive coordinator or another offensive coordinator?
My thing is, that's going to be Steve's pick. You know, hired him for a reason. He's running his offense. Every coach hires somebody, and it's not their offense you bringing in, it's the head coach's offense you bringing in. That he's going to make that final decision. I've always felt Steve was maybe short term as the offensive coordinator. Okay. I've always felt that way. So if it's this year,
someone
next
said
year,
he kind of got maybe pushed into it a little bit doing
Steve's never been a guy that.
I mean, you know him well.
Yeah, he's never told me he wanted to be an offensive coordinator, and always said, "Listen, I didn't want it." But then he got put into that spot and he did it. That's what's always made me believe, and I've told you this, it's short term.
Yes.
That's either a year or 2 years, and then, you know, we go on from there.
Yes.
But he ran what Ed wanted him to run. There's no question about it. Ed's a defensive-oriented coach, but still, he's got some say on what's being run on the offensive side of the football. And you've also got, a 73 or 74-year-old wide receiver coach in Jerry Sullivan.
Yes.
Who had a lot to do with the offense this year along with Steve. It'll be interesting to see what happens. No staff stays the same.
Right.
None. Alabama wins the national championship. They got 7 new guys on the coaching staff. So it's all about, I think, always trying to enhance your football team. He said it. He has been on our program a couple times and said it. Sean Salisbury has said that he would come in some capacity.
Do you like him?
You know, he's a former NFL player.
Right.
He's been part of this. And he would have been hired this year as an analyst. But the NCAA got involved and said, you can't do it. Because he was having these quarterback camps. And they didn't want the connection that you might try to recruit some kid that you had been involved with. But I think Sean's going to get involved. He's got a real fertile mind for football, has played the position, understands it very, very well. And I know he's pitching, put it to you that way.
Yeah.
And he would have been hired in the summer had it not been for the NCAA. Now, he'd have been hired as an analyst.
Yes.
But eventually, I think there probably was a little agreement. Hey, you know, you come in here, kind of get involved, understand what we're doing, and then we'll have a job for you in 2019.
Mike, you and Dave Aranda have sat down and talked plenty of times. This is the time of year where, again, other programs come a-calling for a defensive coordinator, for a head coach. Maybe the NFL is looking for a defensive coordinator. He's the highest paid assistant coordinator in the country in college. What do you think his future is at LSU?
I've not heard him connected to any college head coaching job. You see reports.
Do you think he wants to be a head coach?
I know he does, but it has to be the right fit. The first one to tell me about this was Bobby Kern. I do a weekly show with Bobby, ESPN Honolulu.
Really?
And Bobby was a guy that was a California guy, and he met up with a lady, and so he's in Hawaii now. And Dave was there in Hawaii, and Dave and Bob became pretty close friends. And Bobby told me this 2 years ago. He said, I'm telling you, he is going to be a college head coach. And I talked to Dave a couple times, and he said, at one time, I didn't look at it that way. But, he said, I'm looking at it that way. I can hire my own people, do my own thing. And he said, if the right opportunity strikes, I'm not just taking any job, but if the right opportunity happens, I would be open to a head coaching job in the college ranks. So at one time, I always thought that if he left LSU, it would be go to the NFL.
Yes, a lot of people did.
Now, having listening to him, I'm convinced that he is going to hang, and there's going to be a team that's going to ring that doorbell and say, hey, come take over our program. He has gotten much better as a recruiter, X and O guy. He knows it really, really well. He lives it. It's you can see he's hit that point. And listening to him talk, it reminded me a little bit of listening to Ed Orgeron back in the early 2000s. Ed had never told me anything about being a head coach. Never. And all of a sudden, he starts talking about, one day I'm going to be a head coach, I'm telling you. And almost like his biological coach clock went off, and now I want to be a head coach somewhere, and he got that opportunity. But I think he's maybe learned from some situations, just don't jump at any job because you might get caught in that particular spot.
Yeah, and run the reputation, then you're starting all over again. Coach Orgeron, do you anticipate a contract extension for him?
I think fairly soon you will get that. Now, if they hold off making the announcement till after January 1st, which I don't get to begin with, but sometimes I don't understand a lot of things.
Especially with the national early signing period coming up on the 19th
Why wouldn't you
have
have done it already? They've had talks already about extending the contract. So let me just say that there has been some talks with him about it, and I think in the very near future he will get that extension, because you're talking about for recruits, they want to know, hey, is he going to be here? He's going to be here, because all the thing I read from some of the media guys was he was out the door. So
on the hot seat when it started.
So I understand where Ed's coming from here. That, hey, listen, I want that as quickly as I can get it, because I need to sell that, not maybe necessarily for the 2019 guys. He pretty much knows who he's going to get. Now, one thing he can't do is repeat what happened a year ago and not finishing strong in the late period of February when he had 2 or 3 guys that at the last minute, they hit the reverse and they were out of there. And in particular, Patrick Surtain, who was a guy that looked to be an LSU guy the entire time, and he peeled out. This year, I think, is to watch on what happens defensive linemen. They've only got one verbal commitment for a defensive lineman. And you look at that group next year, even if all of them come back, if it's Alexander, if it's Fahoku, if it's Rashard Lawrence, all 3 of those guys ain't going to be there in 2020. So you got to think a little bit ahead of time, and you can't have a recruiting class with just one defensive lineman.
No, not know it at all. All right, let's talk about the Greedy Williams situation. Announced this week that he's going to forego his senior year and head to the NFL, but also announced that he's not going to play in the Fiesta Bowl. He's going to sit that out. Mike, what's your take on that? There have been many articles now written within the last few days talking about his home situation with the daughter coming basically dirt poor from North Louisiana. Talk about that situation with Greedy Williams, your thoughts on whether, first of all, the kid making the right decision. Is he not? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it?
Listen, it's his decision not to play. and you got to protect your own self at this stage. If you, a player, Ed Ogeron got a $150,000 bonus for playing in a New Year's Six game. Mm-hmm. What are you getting? What are you getting out of there? You ain't getting nothing.
A ditty bag.
Yeah. And so I think, too, the ramifications of Jalen Smith is still in the back of a lot of people's mind. Mm-hmm. Jalen was an unbelievable player at Notre Dame. And in the 33 years I've scouted, he is the highest rated inside linebacker I have ever done. And Eagles tear up that knee. He almost lost his leg. Mm-hmm. God bless him that he was able to come back. And he's been certainly a pretty good player for the Cowboys. He's a really, really terrific player. But I think that's in the back of a lot of kids' minds. And so when you don't have anything, mm-hmm. Hey, I told you this before, I knew Devon White was going to play. Yes. That last game stuck in his craw pretty good. And I think you will see a little bit of hit and miss with that. Well, some guys saying, I'm playing. Devon White's going to be a top 12, 13 pick, just like what Grady will. Yes. But the thing about it is you got to look at kind of protecting your own interests here. And for a lot of people that have told me, oh, man, he's abandoning his team, I'll put it to you this way. If you're a 21-year-old and you're going to college for business, and right before your senior season, you got a company comes and said, hey, I got a multi-million-dollar contract, but you got to give up college for a year. Man, your deal is spin me that.
Right.
I'm signing it today.
You better believe it.
So the same people that are squawking about it, just put if that was your son, and knowing some of the things that happened in that situation, there is no right or wrong decision.
Yes.
It's Greedy's choice to do, and I agree with it. Because listen, I've sat in that room with junior eligible players. Mm-hmm. I've talked to parents, guardians, aunts, uncles, whatever, and along with the player. And a lot of times they don't like to hear what I tell them because I'll give them the information, what I know best. And they've been told, oh, you're going to be a first, second round pick. And they come see me and I tell them, I think you'll be a fifth or sixth round pick. And you hear that player tell them, I don't have anything. I got nothing. If it means, being a fifth or sixth round pick, I just want to play in the NFL.
Yes.
I think a lot of people's misconception is, and they don't want to believe it, you do have athletes that are going to school to get their PhD in sports.
Right.
They don't want to buy that.
No, that's what
you got to be an athlete first. I get it. But you got to understand the dynamics of that young man. And you know what? Respect his decision.
Agreed.
You got your decision on what you think, but respect his. But we live in a world where anybody who's got, they in a garage somewhere with a Twitter or they got on Facebook, they can make any comment in the world.
And they do.
But they don't know the whole part of it.
Right.
Put yourself or put your son in that spot. That if he's going to be a top pick and he's going to play, some will and some won't.
Right.
So you got to respect his decision on that.
Absolutely. Mike, how many juniors do you think will declare for the draft on this LSU team this year?
Well, I know Greedy and Devon will. Those two for sure. I think, LSU may come out of this pretty good. You look at, the guy I thought might was Christian Fulton.
Okay. 2 to 3 months out now after the surgery, right?
2.5 to 3 month rehab. Mm-hmm. But, I would probably give him a third round pick grade. Mm-hmm. If he comes back and play another year, he might be in the same spot Greedy's in right now, as a top 10 or 12 pick. And again, that's his choice to do. You see Rashard Lawrence and Fajoku and Alexander, they would all be middle round picks in the best defensive line class I have ever done.
Okay.
So, it's what do you want to do? Do you want to play another year, maybe help your draft stock, or say, you know what, I'm done with it. I'm coming out early. I think Ed feels pretty good about if he's got, it won't be a widespread leaving like we've seen in the past.
Right. I want to ask you about a senior, Foster Morrow. We had talked a little bit about him earlier. Not really utilized as a pass catcher this year because he had to come in and stay in block and mass protect. What do you think where he will go in the NFL draft, and What do you think he projects at on the professional level?
He's a tight end. You don't have a lot of guys that can block, like what
He's
Foster
already proved he can block, and we know he can catch.
And he is one tough guy. Ed told me this. It wasn't this summer, it was last summer. He was like, Mike, if I wouldn't know any better, I knew he went to Jesuit. Well, I'd swear he's a Bayou guy. Man, he'll fight you at the drop of a hat. He said, you talk about a tough guy. He is as tough a guy as you're going to get on a football field. He's a big target receiver. He's not going to win a lot of races downfield, but he's slick about setting you up and getting a little separation. He's not going to get a lot of yardage after the catch. He is going to the Senior Bowl, and I think that certainly will help him. The offseason's not built for him, you know, because they want to see the great athlete that's going to run that 4.65 40-yard dash and that 38.5 vertical. Okay, he's not going to do that. You got to watch the tape on him and see what he brings to the table. He's a tremendous inline blocker. He is total LSU team player. And he can catch the football. So that's a spot for him in the NFL. I think he's a later round pick guy, but
gets with the right offense, right?
Right offense, I think he'll do quite well in the NFL.
Yeah, so do I. I really do. Let's talk about Devon White. You know, I did this on my radio show this week. I went and did the research, and Mike, I got to tell you, you know, you're a history guy. You love the history of sports. You know the history of LSU. And when I started going through all the linebackers that have donned the purple and gold, and then you get to the point where you say Devon White is the first Butkus winner. Now, we know the Butkus Award had been forever, okay? But when you look at all the long lineage of fantastic linebackers that have come out of LSU, wow. What an honor for Devon White. But, I mean, again, carrying the torch for all those guys that came before him as well.
He's the best linebacker I've ever seen at LSU.
Wow.
The best. You know, I saw Warren Capone and Al Richardson and Melanson. And Brady James was terrific. Eric Hill. That wasn't maybe a more physical linebacker like what Eric was. And he ended up being one of the top 12, 13 picks in the draft. But Devon White is special. And I remember talking to Devon right before he started his freshman year. You know what he was talking about? Man, I think I might get a chance to play a little running back here. My team was, do you know those guys ahead of you?
Right.
They were pretty good too. But, you know, he had been an unbelievable high school running back. He had played on defense, but he was an unbelievable high school running back. No, he was a man playing against like the junior varsity team. That's how good he was. But it's his advance, Eric, of understanding the game more, the breakdowns up front, getting into the right lane to make a tackle. Athletically, the offseason is built for him. Wait till they get him on a track and get him under the weights and see the athleticism this guy has. He's going to be unreal to do that part. But then you watch him on the field, tackle after tackle after tackle. I think one of the things that got overlooked in the A&M game because of not finishing, you miss a field goal, you flub a punt, you know, you can't get off the field, was he changed the game.
Yes.
LSU's not in that game without Devon White. A&M's going down to put more points on the board, and Devon White strips the football, Divinity scoop and score. Without Devon, A&M wins that game in overtime. LSU had no momentum up till that point. Yes. He's a game changer there. And again, I've seen it growing up here and in scouting. He's the best linebacker I have ever seen at LSU.
That's pretty strong. Mike Detillier is our guest tonight. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. A quick note from our underwriters. We'll be right back. We'll talk some New Orleans Saints. We'll open up the phone lines in a few minutes. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Mike Detillier with me tonight. We'll be right back.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Mike Detillier with us tonight. Mike, Saints go down to Dallas 13-10. They're now 10-2 after a 10-game win streak. Your thoughts on the game?
They got beat up. You know, it's the worst performance of the Sean Payton era on offense. It did remind me after the second series. I've seen this before. Seattle did it. And when they had the Legion of Boom.
The
and
physicality.
the speed of Dallas to get to the football. Nothing worked offensively. You know, I know you came out throwing, but the rushing lanes weren't there. And when you tried, Van Der Esch was there. Jalen Smith was there. And I thought it was the inside pressure that got to Drew.
Me too.
Because he's a guy that likes to step up in the pocket and give you a little bit more time to get open downfield. He couldn't do it.
Right.
The pressure
Did that surprise you? I thought they'd get some outside pressure, but I didn't think they'd get inside pressure.
I didn't think that inside pressure would be there.
Neither.
Boy,
I
it
did
was.
not. It was.
It was, and it took it away. And the referees let them get away with the physicality. I don't have an issue with it because they did it on both sides.
Right, absolutely.
They let the Saints do the exact same thing. But I hadn't seen a secondary be physical up front and physical on the back end. Because, man, they were kind of bumping, and you watch the game film of it, they were real physical with the Saints receivers all the way downfield, and they let it go. But, man, Saints offensively got nothing going at all. And, you know, the crazy thing is the Cowboys took the Saints out of the fast lane of traffic, shoved them in the middle, and said, you're going to play our game.
Yes.
And that's exactly what they did. The Cowboys offense was no great shakes. This is 18 straight games now. The Saints have held a rusher, individual rusher, under 100 yards. And Zeke, they gave him the ball.
He's a real
but
deal.
where he made a difference, Eric, early on, catching the football coming out of the backfield, that little screen pass, little dump off, man, he's really good at it. And Dak made some hay there, getting the football to him. I just thought that night, the Cowboys were a better team. And you got to give it to them.
Right.
Despite as bad as you played on offense, you still had a chance late in the game to win it.
Yes, you did.
You know, Jordan Lewis's interception kind of ended it, but you had a shot late. The Saints defense, you really couldn't ask them to play any better than that. Onyemata had a signature game where you had 2 career sacks. He gets 3 in one game. The Saints did a good job defensively, but again, Eric, eventually somebody's got your number. And it happened to be, it was the Cowboys.
Yes.
They had your number. But I tell this to all Saints fans who complain about it. If I would have told you back in August, 12 games into the season, you're 10-2. Man, I'll take that. I saw that schedule.
All day.
You got to be kidding me. 10-2? Come on. That's no way. But I think they would have added on to it. 10-2 as long as we beat the Falcons and the Cowboys.
Yes.
I think more than anything, it was the fact it was the Cowboys that ended up beating them. And you got to give the Cowboys full credit. That night, they were the better football team.
The physicality up front in terms of their defensive line, again, attacking the middle of the Saints' offensive line, which we know has been a blueprint for success for teams. Also, the physicality on the outside with the defensive backs, with the officials allowing them to play there. You know, we threw bouquets and accolades at the 4 undrafted free agents catching touchdowns against Atlanta or the week before, but then you get into a situation where they couldn't handle physicality, couldn't handle separation. My question to you is that an anomaly, or are we going to see Brandon Marshall? Ted Ginn comes off IR on week 15 against Carolina. What are your thoughts?
I don't know about Ted Ginn Jr. I really don't know if that's the option. It could be, but I'm not sure about that injury. It is what it is. They matched up well against you, and you ended up winning. You got a lot of people, we got to change the offense. Okay, genius, you're going to change an offense that was setting all those records and putting all those points up to do something different? No, you just got to do things that you were doing right better.
Yes.
You didn't do it that night. there's a change-up every week. That's what's called the game plan. I'll never forget, though, Greg Williams told me and A-Bear this one time. He said, you know what? They got game plans. When you look it in your hand at the end of that game, it falls softly into the garbage. I think that was one of those games offensively that it fell very softly into the garbage. You didn't match up well, you didn't play well, and you got to give the Cowboys credit. I'm not rearranging everything because of one game. Come on. Drew Brees brought this up. 13 games into the 09 season. We 13-0. We lose the last 3. Oh, you got to start changing this up and that up and this up and that up. And he says, when we got into the playoffs, we did the same stuff we did during the season, and it all worked.
Yes.
And so, also, too, this game is humbling. It's like life. You can get on a stretch where everything goes right for you. And then you get a stretch where things don't go right. And you don't change everything in your life if things go wrong. You continue to do the same things you've done before. So you hear everybody's, they know the number of the guy that's buried in the tomb of an unknown soldier. Yes. They got answers to everything. But basically it came down to you didn't execute well. And you played in their lane of football. Yes. And very few teams will be able to do it. I'm not saying they won't win, they won't lose another game, but you won't see a defense like what you saw that night.
Mike, the defense on the Saints side looks legitimate. We talked about it, maybe gave excuses earlier in the season. The offense is putting up these prolific numbers. It's like 09. The defense gets a chance to be able to get a lead in front of them. They can pin their ears back, etc. This was a knockdown, drag-out, close game, and this defense came to play. One of the greatest defensive plays I've ever seen in Saints history was Cam Jordan with the headlock on Lyle Collins, being headlocked by Lyle Collins, pushing through, strip sack, recover the fumble, willed that play. But again, it's not just him. It's at every level of the defense that, again, these guys are stepping up. You were at training camp. Did you foresee this? Tell me about the evolution of this defense.
Nothing like this. We knew they were going to be better. I'm disappointed in how the secondary has played, because I thought that's where we may see the biggest improvement, and yet it's been Demario Davis, Alex Anzalone staying healthy and making an impact at linebacker. Sheldon Rankins, we talked to Ryan Nielsen. He's one of our campers at the offensive defensive line camp, and he was like, Sheldon's got a chance to maybe clip double digits as a sack guy. And he said, you don't see that much. He said, again, unless you got Aaron Donald, you're not seeing a lot of that inside deal. He said, I think he's got a chance. He was, I think very optimistic that Onyemata would make that turn. And certainly we saw he had a huge game. I think down the stretch, a lot of this is going to be pressure built on the Saints defensive line. Because pressure breaks the pipe. Because late in games, you got to throw the football. The development of Marcus Davenport.
Yes.
And it got derailed a little bit because of the injury.
It did.
Cam Jordan is one of the elite players in the NFL, of his ability to play the run so well, but also edge pressure. And then now you got Rankins. And if Onyemata comes through, man, if you get Marcus Davenport to play up, man, you got something there. Because late in the season, it's not going to be all these track meet games. The games are going to be much, much tighter, and because you're playing the teams with a little better defense. I don't know that there's a great defense in the NFL. There are good defenses. I don't know there are great ones. I think that maybe has passed us, Eric, overall in the NFL. But the improvement, and again, I go back to the linebacking core of what Demario Davis has meant to this team, his ability to run the field, getting involved in tackle after tackle. And Alex Anzalone has stayed healthy. And we see just what type of football player he is.
Yeah. One of the things I looked at last week, and we talked about on this program, talked about through the week on the show, on the radio show, turnovers, sacks, tackle for losses, all ramping up on this defense as you've seen this defense start to play well. I mean, again, more of an opportunistic defense.
Yeah. My thing is, you look back at 09, what was the signature thing on defense?
39 turnovers.
Turnovers. And now what you +8? give away, take away.
Yeah.
That's going in your favor, and that's on the real high side on Sean Payton's teams, because we haven't seen much of that with that plus on it and to get very close to double digits.
Eli Apple, a little bit exposed the other night. Again, Dallas played against Eli Apple for quite a few guys.
Yeah, they knew where to
knew him
attack
inside
him.
and out.
Yeah.
What do you anticipate happening going further? Because he was holding his own for the most part up until that game.
I think you'll see inconsistent moments with Eli Apple. I think he's that type of player where he's athletically gifted. I worry a little bit about sometimes his confidence wanes. Now, you might say, oh, well, his technique was this and that. Well, I think when you start to lose your confidence, you start making mistakes technically. And I think once he got a couple passes thrown his way, you could see the look in his eye that, here they coming again, and they coming again. At that position, you a man on an island. You ain't getting a lot of help. And so I think you will see inconsistent play where some games he'll look good,
right.
In other games he'll get exposed.
I said to the phone lines, Hal is in Westwego. Hal, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Hal.
Hey, you guys.
Yeah.
Mike, might be able to answer this pretty quickly. Since because you have a relationship with Coach O, and you talked about how Coach Orgeron would pick an offensive coordinator based on the kind of offense that he would like to see run. I'm curious if you've had conversations with him about it and whether or not he would want an offense that would give him problems since he's defensive-minded. And I'm just curious if you have any insight about that.
Thank you, Hal.
It's a good question, Hal, because I've talked to him about it, and he said, as a defensive coach, first thing I think of, what will give me the most problems on offense?
Yes.
He said, because that comes into play here of what would give me the biggest problems offensively. O has always stressed stop the run, because he knows that if I can take one bit of that away, then I can do things in the backfield and maybe send an extra guy. We saw Mississippi State play LSU. They were one-dimensional. Man, poor Nick Fitzpatrick. He couldn't hit the backside of a barn with a bazooka that night. They were a one-dimensional team. All they could do was run the ball. And Ole Miss, all they could really do was throw it.
Yes.
So when you can take that away, it helps a lot. But how will you bring up, I think, is a good point. Because I do think that what he thinks and who he went up against at the Miamis, at the USCs, at LSU is in his mind. He hasn't played them Big 12 teams that sling it all around 50, 60 times a game. That's not what you're going up against. So I think in the back of your mind, you always think, what's giving me the most trouble in the SEC? How many SEC teams do that? You know the team that's given him the most trouble has been Dan Mullen when he was at State and when he's now at Florida, scheme-wise. Because talent-wise, Alabama has the edge on you.
Of course.
They're better in the trenches, the speed part. I do think this offseason, they have to think long and hard about getting linemen to do a better job. Because everybody weight trains the same today. One person does it, everybody repeats. The speed and agility of Alabama's offensive and defensive lines, the difference. It's not so much the power, it's the quickness and the speed. You got to do something maybe to rearrange your training to have those big guys to maybe get a little bit quicker, hand-wise, foot-wise, because I do think that's a big part of why. It's not so much the power, I think it's the speed and quickness. What gave him trouble against Florida? It was the speed coming at him.
Yes. Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. Got a question, or two questions, really. I don't mind the call on 4th and 1 that Sean Payton did. My question is I thought maybe they should have put Taysom Hill on that one to give them better options. And then my second question is we seem to be loaded at wide receivers, so who's the receiving core we going to end up with in the playoffs? And I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you.
The Taysom Hill thing, I thought the same thing at that point. That maybe that
was surprised.
That was the option there. To be honest, if it had been me, I'd have kicked the field goal because it was one of those type of games where, it was going to be tight. I needed as many points as I could get. But, hindsight's always 20/20 on that. the receiving core, I think that's an area this offseason Sean Payton's going to do some rearranging. You know, you see, while Traquan, he's got some ability,
Right.
It's been some inconsistent.
Got to get stronger too.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Keith Kirkwood got away with one that you see a veteran get away with.
I agree.
But very few rookies get away with that little arm bar shove and find a way to get open. Kirkwood's going to be in that number. Traquan's going to be in that number. Certainly Michael Thomas. The thing to watch down the stretch is how teams play Alvin Kamara. Because now, Drew talked about in the Eagles game, it was double coverage. And a lot of times, it was Malcolm Jenkins covering Alvin. And they hit on the big play on that part. Now you're seeing a little bit different where they're playing a corner up against them. And this week they got Anthony Adams going up against him, Andrew Adams, I should say. And he's sort of a hybrid player. That he's played a little corner, played in the nickel, also played some safety. That's going to be a big part of how you're going to match up, because now teams are rotating coverage, double coverage to Michael Thomas. But how do you cover Alvin? That, I think, is something to watch down the stretch. Not everybody's going to be able to match up against Kamara. I think Jordan Lewis did a very good job against him in that spot. And he's a corner.
And also the Dallas linebackers as well, which again were quick. They didn't miss a tackle that night.
Man, listen, you talk about the yards after catch. They ain't got squat after catch. You caught it, you went down. And that's something, you and I saw growing up. You don't see that today, man. A guy puts one catch, one move, and then he's off into the open field. The Cowboys that night, you went down.
You like the Saints this weekend against Tampa?
Yeah, I think in a low-scoring game.
It's gonna be sloppy out there.
It's going to be rainy. The weather we're going to get Saturday, they're going to get Sunday, and so the one reason I like the Saints, I think they're. Not a lot of NFL teams play in bad weather anymore, especially rain and that sort of deal. But Tampa doesn't run the football well at all. Well, the Saints have shown they can run the football. And I think in this sort of weather, come on, you're not throwing the football 45 times in that slop. That ball gets hard like a brick when it gets wet. And so you're going to have to run the football more. And I would take the team that has shown you they can run it, that being New Orleans.
Mike, always appreciate the time.
Thanks you, Eric.
So much for
always
being
my
tonight.
pleasure, bud.
That's Mike Detillier again with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV. Also, Friday nights, 9 o'clock, statewide, Pelican Sports Television, and always at ericasher.com. You can also check me out on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeart Radio app. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. And as always, we appreciate you going out there and supporting our underwriters as well. Special thanks to those underwriters. Also special thanks to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Naila Jones, Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Mike Detillier, I'm Eric Asher. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.